understand. You bet.
How are you?
Diversity, equity, and inclusion, and we're going to discuss our action plan. Before I have Rebecca Fleury introduce our presenter, I would like to ask, are there any public comments at this time? And we're limited to 3 minutes. And more than likely, if we have time, we'll have public comments at the end of the meeting too. Are there any public comments at this time? Kathy?
No, thank you.
All right, just wanted to make sure. Thank you. All right, without further ado, I'll turn it over to our city manager, Rebecca Fleury. Rebecca, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I will keep my comments brief because really it's not me that you want to hear from this evening. It's Ms. Holly, who is our Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Officer. It's exciting to be at this particular point because I remember having these conversations well before COVID. Certainly in a lot of work that the city has been doing and has been asked to do. And why it's exciting is because it's brought us to this particular moment. I can't believe that Kimberly's been with us almost 6 months, and so many things are happening, so many discussions, and just watching her learn about the organization and meet with people has been really exciting, and I appreciate that that's what she's using to inform her work. Certainly, we have things like the equity audit, and we have things like the city's master plan and the 2-year work plan through the commission, et cetera. And so I think Kimberly's work is going to just inform all of that going forward. So tonight we're anxious to hear from her. For those of you who don't know, sitting to my right is Kimberly Holly. She is the city's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer. She's a member of the city manager's team. I'm excited, and Ted and I have already seen a great deal of progress and information in picking the brain of this fabulous professional sitting next to me, not to mention her historical knowledge of the city that she brings that, you know, almost like no other can. So I guess with that, Mayor, I am going to turn over the rest of this workshop to Kimberly Holly.
Thank you, Rebecca, and now I have to live up to what you described. I'll do my best. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, City Commissioners, community members and friends. It is really exciting to be here with you this evening. I've had the pleasure of talking with some of you individually, and so it's great to have this opportunity for a more fuller discussion. As I present to you our roadmap for where we're at with DEI work and where we're headed. Before I begin, I would like to talk just very briefly about why I decided to take this role with the city. I am a Battle Creek native, and so this work is very personal to me. It's, you know, I've come to realize that over the course of most of my professional career, I have done some aspect of this work, probably just not under the title or acronym of DEI, but I've always gravitated towards this type of work or sought opportunities that will allow me to work in this capacity because of who I am and because of the foundation that I had as a person. Thanks to the values that my parents instilled in me. But also, I am a proud product of Battle Creek Public Schools, and that was really my first external experience in terms of navigating within a system and interacting with people outside of my family unit. And that really laid a solid foundation because I was very blessed for that experience. I won't say my age, but at that time, Battle Creek Public School System was the most diverse school system within the city of Battle Creek. And so from kindergarten on, I interacted, connected, had deep relationships with people from all different walks of life, all different identities, all different home environments, different socioeconomic status, and that really shaped how I moved through the world because I was able to experience, learn, and grow from all of those different friendships and connections. And I bring that, there's a book, Fierce Conversations, that talks about you don't see things as they are, you see things as you are, because subconsciously you view things through your lived experiences. And so that's the lens that I bring to everything that I do. It's who I am, and it's the lens that I bring to this work. And it has made my life so rich because of it. And it has also, the teams that I've led or that I've worked with, it has made them so much more productive and innovative. So when I had a conversation with Rebecca about this role and learned about her personal commitment to this work as a city leader and where the vision for where this could go, I said I'm in. Absolutely, I'm in, because I truly believe that the city of Battle Creek can and should be a model for the community and as an employer what the principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion stand for. So as Rebecca mentioned, I have been in this role just under 6 months. And just want to take you on a journey of where we're at and where we're headed. So fasten your seatbelts and let's head down the road. And this is my first time up here using this, so bear with me. Let's see what happens. Okay. Awesome. We're off to a great start. Tank is full. Let's go. Okay, so I wanted to start here with just briefly talking about the words themselves, diversity, equity, and inclusion, because in this day and age, there are a variety of connotations that people have attached to this acronym. And more when I am invited to speak to different groups and present, I find it very helpful to provide an analogy that kind of neutralizes what people are bringing based on their experiences, which could be positive or they could be harmful. And so some of you that have talked with me have heard me use this analogy, but I like it because it uses a party as an analogy, which everyone can relate to or understand. It's a popular quote by Renee Myers, who is a VP of strategy at Netflix, and she actually has now trademarked the quote. It's so popular, but she has coined this as diversity is being asked to the party and inclusion is being asked to dance. And then author Ruchika Tolshian kind of added to that definition with equity as being part of the planning committee. Think about a party, being invited, you get there, you're asked to dance, and maybe you were part of the planning committee, got to create what this experience would be for others. When I am talking and presenting, I usually describe diversity as embracing all aspects of human difference and experiences that shape who we are as individuals. Equity means everyone has what they need to succeed, and inclusion is about welcoming people exactly as they are and valuing their participation. I would encourage you all to reflect on what diversity, equity, and inclusion means to you, what connotations you may have attached to that acronym, and how you might think about those words moving forward after today. Just a little bit of background, which most of you probably are familiar with. But this work was kind of initiated out of discussions with the African American Collaborative that prompted the pursuit of an equity audit as a first step towards identifying areas in need of change within the city and enhancing a culture of diversity, equity, and inclusion. The city contracted with MGT Consulting to conduct the equity audit, and they completed that process and provided a report in April of 2022. The audit committee decided to focus efforts around human resources and police community relations. So that is the focus of the equity audit report. It is available on our website. If you have not read it, I do encourage you to do so. I just wanted to mention a few key findings or recommendations from the report. One identified a lack of representation at all levels of city government, and that would be an important area to focus on for the city of Battle Creek. A desire among community members for transparency in police department statistics and required trainings. Increasing opportunities for positive community and police department interaction. Increased and continued training at all levels of city government. So in addition to incorporating trainings around diversity, equity, and inclusion, also looking at how we consistently continue or set a schedule for other trainings like anti-harassment and anti-discrimination training to make sure that they are on a set schedule throughout all city departments. Embedding a culture of diversity, equity, and inclusion into the fabric of all City of Battle Creek departments. Hiring a DEI officer to champion DEI throughout the organization. Those are just a few of the recommendations. Again, this is available on our website. It is much more robust than just the few findings that I pointed out today. And it also includes some statistics. For example, 37% of surveyed employees don't necessarily believe that there is a career development path for all employees at Battle Creek. 31% of surveyed employees do not necessarily feel that the city fosters a workplace that allows employees to be themselves at work without fear. These are numbers that we need to pay attention to and work towards progress so that ideally that would be 0%. So the city acted on the recommendation to hire a DEI officer to champion DEI efforts at the city. I thought it would be helpful to just briefly cover the role of the DEI office. The initial focus will be primarily internal, although there will be some community-facing efforts with key stakeholders. I've outlined some broad overarching responsibilities for the DEI office, leading the development and execution of DEI strategies, trainings, and metrics across all city departments, assess and analyze current city policies and procedures to eliminate bias and ensure equitable access to services, champion the importance of a diverse and inclusive culture, build partnerships with community organizations and stakeholders. I have had a variety of experiences over the past 6 months, so I thought it would also be helpful to kind of dispel a few DEI office myths based on some interactions that I've had thus far. The DEI office is not an extension of human resources. I work very closely with human resources, looking at our hiring practices and our policies, and it's a fantastic team, but we are two very different functions within city government. So anything that anyone would normally go to HR for, you still would do that. The DEI office does not provide mediation services. I will not swoop in with a DEI cape and help settle any arguments or disputes. However, I will provide guidance, resources, and training for staff to navigate how to have difficult conversations. The DEI office does not handle discrimination complaints. The city has a formal process for how to do that. And the DEI office, at least initially, will not provide direct service to the community. I will be working closely with all of our city departments to make sure that our community members have equitable access to our services, but I won't provide direct services. There are important principles that are guiding our approach to this work. First and foremost, all City of Battle Creek employees have an opportunity to contribute and benefit. We welcome diversity of thought and experiences. We are cultivating collaboration across departments and teams. Clarity and transparency is a must in order to build trust. This next one I should have put in all caps, but grace to learn and grow. I like to say that I am in a constant state of learning and unlearning, and I have learned how to allow myself grace in that process. This is not easy work, and so that is a very important principle as we go down this path. Allowing each other the grace to learn and grow. Balance long-term commitment to change with a sense of urgency. This is a big vision, and we want to see change immediately, but we also need to understand that this is not a short-term project. It's a long-term commitment. Change takes time, and it's a process, and it's a practical implementation. And lastly, embracing change management. This is exciting, it's scary, it may be frustrating, we may go down one path and have to take a detour or circle back. It'll be all the things, and we need to embrace that up front. There are critical elements to this work so that it is not performative, but is actually geared towards real change. The city must know our why for engaging in this work. We must be very clear about that. We must adequately allocate resources to sustain this work, in addition to time and staffing. Commitment to do the work at all levels of city government. So our city commissioners, our city leaders in terms of our city manager and our assistant city manager must support this work through your actions and allocation of resources. Senior leadership must model the principles of DEI and hold ourselves and our team members accountable to the work. The DEI office must commit to providing the training, resources, and guidance for this work. And all staff must commit to fully participating. Policies and practices, focusing on policies, not individuals. One of the things about DEI, I guess a few things, and probably should have said this up front, is what DEI is not, right? DEI is not about judging, it's not about shaming, it's not about exclusion, it's the exact opposite. It's not about focusing on changing individual beliefs. It's about focusing on the policies and practices of city government so that we are equitable, accessible, inclusive, and that we provide the best services possible to our community and to our employees. Data and metrics. It will be really important for us to develop data-driven strategies so that we are able to measure our progress. Communication, again, transparency, and creating a communication feedback loop. Accountability. It will be important for us at the onset to build a framework for accountability. And finally, affirmation. It is really important to celebrate the wins, no matter how small. We are recommending this work occur in 3 phases initially. Phase 1 is really about laying the foundation for this work. Because this intentional effort is fairly new in terms of being an intentional effort for the city, it's important that we lay a solid foundation of knowledge and core concepts and practices from which to build upon. We've talked about formally establishing a DEI office as one of our first steps. Creating a collective vision for this work. So how does the city define DEI? What are our values as it relates to this work? And just as importantly, what are the behaviors that are associated with those values? Oftentimes, people stop at the values, we list them, but what are the behaviors that are going to show that we're actually living into those values? Because that's what creates your culture. Stakeholder engagement. As I mentioned before, it's important for all staff to be able to contribute to this process. So creating a shared knowledge and understanding of DEI principles, learning about what this work means to staff members, and what are their aspirations for the city as it relates to this work. Out of that, developing a DEI statement that will guide our efforts internally, will also be community-facing, and will help inform our overall mission and values as an institution. Assessments. Specifically looking at language access and our language limited English proficiency plan. What updates do we need to make to this plan? How are we training all staff on this role in terms of LEP? And how is that embedded into our onboarding process going forward? Accessibility, assessing where we are in terms of serving community members and employees with disabilities, not just being legally compliant, but going above and beyond to ensure that we're truly creating an inclusive environment. Stakeholder engagement was previous. Now we want to compile all of that input and analyze what existing data we do have and identify what tools we might need to analyze data going forward. All of this will be utilized to create our theory of change for DEI. Theory of change is really the how and why a desired change is expected to happen. So if we have this collective vision that we formed, what do we need to do differently to reach that vision? Why? And how are we going to do that? That's our DEI theory of change. We'll use that theory of change in phase 2 of our approach, where we really focus on foundational diversity, equity, and inclusion principles. We'll use that information to develop our action plan, and we'll also focus on key areas in terms of training and education, organizational culture, service and community, and the DEI office. What structure and team is needed to shepherd this body of work? So let's dig a little bit deeper into those areas. DEI action plan. So we've gotten stakeholder input and engagement. We've developed our theory of change. We're using that information to identify what are our priorities. From there, we'll develop strategies and objectives and key performance indicators. Those key performance indicators are going to be our metrics for how we are able to measure our progress. Training and education, developing core competencies among staff members across all departments as it relates to diversity, equity, and inclusion. What does this mean? How does this apply to my role? How might I need to do certain functions differently if I'm truly embedding DEI into the functions of my department? Practices and policies. This is where we are going to start to analyze our practices and our policies to determine if there are any bias or if we need to develop new policies in order to ensure that we're in alignment with what we've identified as DEI for the city and where we want to go. Training and career pathways. As I mentioned previously, wanting to see diversity at all levels of city government. So what is our plan in terms of career development for all employees? Developing pathways. Also access into careers with the city. How are we engaging the community so that they know about these opportunities? Organizational culture, psychological safety. This is about believing that it's okay to take risks within your role at the city. It's okay to challenge the status quo, that you don't fear retaliation, that you can bring your full self to your role. Learning and reflection, communication, and inclusion. These are all elements that are really important to creating a culture of belonging. Services and community, I've mentioned language access, accessibility, community engagement, and developing partnerships. And then, as I talked about before, the DEI office, which structure, what staffing, what resources are going to be important to supporting this body of work. Continuing down the road. So quiet. Phase 3, operational DEI. This is about when we really start to integrate DEI principles into our routine decision-making processes, further develop our policy analysis, and develop and implement measurable actions. So what does this mean in actuality? Each department develops their own DEI goals. I mentioned previously about developing core competencies. Now we start to measure those core competencies in our performance evaluations. Deepening our stakeholder engagement. How are we leveraging stakeholder input in our long-term planning processes? Community partnerships. How are we aligning with community partners to further our mutual goals, particularly as it relates to the city's master plan? Accountability, accountability, accountability. Evaluation. Oftentimes, people leave evaluation until the end. I firmly believe that you should build evaluation into the beginning for a couple of reasons. One, so that you're creating the right container to be able to measure your progress going forward. And two, it allows you the ability to course correct as you're headed down your path. And then lastly, reporting back to employees and the community about our progress around these efforts. I I think I said this earlier, maybe I was thinking it. DEI is not, although this, what I presented expands over 2 years, this is just our initial kind of roadmap for where we're headed. DEI work is not a 2-year project. This is a long-term commitment to embedding these principles into all aspects of city government so that we move from it being something that we do to being who we are. And these principles, Rebecca mentioned my fondness for our history. These principles are not new to Battle Creek. Diversity and equity and inclusion are really part of our historical DNA. We have such a rich history of the city. From our native peoples in the land to Sojourner Truth calling this place her home for the last 26 years of her life. Sojourner Truth, who embodies these, her life mission embodied these principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's no mistake that Erastus and Sarah Hussey were here. They were conductors on the Underground Railroad. A pathway came through Battle Creek. There are several documented people that were runaway enslaved people that decided to call Battle Creek their home. That was not by accident. Seventh-day Adventists, innovation, I mean, you know, cereal, of course, but there are other innovations that have come out of this city. The risk-taking, the organizing, the resilience. This is all part of Battle Creek's history. This is part of our DNA. So this isn't new to us. We just need to tap back into who we are, into this DNA, to really shape what our city will look like going forward. How we'll serve our community members, what we will stand for as an employer. It's not new to us. I know we're going to open it up for Q&A, so I want to leave you all with a question to reflect on. What about our city's history and DNA, particularly as it relates to DEI, really resonates with you as city commissioners, and why you've decided to serve our city in this way? I don't have to answer that now, just something to reflect on. So that really concludes my presentation of the roadmap that we're on. Obviously, in the fall, we'll have much more detailed information about specific strategies and objectives. But hopefully, for now, this gives you a sense of the role that has been created at the City of Battle Creek, what we've been up to, and how to get in touch with me. And I'll open it up for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from the commission at this time? Commissioner Simmons and then Commissioner Smith.
Thank you. And Kimberly, first off, I'd like to thank you for proactively reaching out to the commissioners to have a meeting. You and I had an opportunity to meet a month or so ago, sat down for an hour. We may have even gone over that, chit-chatting, catching up. We actually, a lifetime ago, worked together, very short period of time, but yeah. I remembered you from that, and you remembered me from that. So happy to be working with you again. And I really appreciated our conversation because it was a lot of questions. It wasn't just you giving me a presentation like this. You're like asking me what my thoughts are about all of these things, and we're all going to have different thoughts.
Absolutely.
Really appreciated that opportunity. A couple of questions that I kind of am, and I may even have talked to you about this in our meeting, but I kind of like to throw it out there in the public because you had mentioned earlier, hey, I'm going to give you kind of a definition of DEI, and sometimes people have a positive thoughts about when they hear that term, and some people have negative. And I think I shared with you that some of the negative comments I've heard. This is in many of our institutions, DEI. I work for the federal government, and we have a DEI council on Battle Creek Air National Guard base. in our education systems, I hear that term quite frequently, and many times I've heard parents think of that in a negative connotation because they're thinking, when they think equity, they're thinking this is equity of outcome, so we must lower the standards so we all have the same outcome. And can you address that maybe misconception that people have about, and I loved your analogy about the party, and I've actually used that. You told me at our meeting about that, and I've shared that a couple of other times. I like that. I may have paraphrased it a little bit. I couldn't remember, but I got it on paper now. Thank you. Just talk about those misconceptions that, because obviously the city, we have certain standards that we're not going to lower to make, everything, police and fire, and we have to have certain standards there. Talk about how you see, maybe this is not changing standards, but changing culture. Just elaborate on that if you could, please.
Absolutely, and I can't speak to where that thought process comes from because that is not at all what equity means. Equity is about access, and it's about being provided with what you need individually in order to succeed. That doesn't mean that someone else is going to get less. It means that you're going to get access and or provided what you need in order to be able to thrive. I don't know if that helps at all because I don't know the basis for where a thought process would mean that you would need to lower standards in order for everyone to reach a certain outcome. In actuality, in order to make sure that you're including everyone, it's about what does this person need, what does this school need in order to have access to services, training, opportunities so that I can fully participate. Does not mean you're going to get anything less. It's going to mean what I need as an individual or as an institution or as a team, whatever the context, to be able to fully thrive and participate.
And I thank you for that, and that's what I understood after our meeting. That's what I took away that the meaning of this was. But I did want to share that and have you elaborate on that because I think that is, especially in education nowadays, I hear this a lot, that my child has to, we're lowering test scores so everybody can pass, those kind of things. And so thank you for clarifying that. And just one final follow-up. You mentioned that on the DEI office myths that your office, you would not handle discrimination complaints. I'm not sure if that's coming from people actually approaching you with complaints. Okay, so then maybe the city manager wants to address this, or you can address this. What mechanisms are in place for city employees that might have those complaints? Do we have an EEO office? HR handle that?
Well, Kimberly mentioned we certainly do have a structure for that, and you mentioned it. I'm sure at the federal government level there is a structure for complaints, and it varies based on what the complaint is. Certainly internally, city employees know that HR could be a start of a complaint. The city manager's office could be a start of a complaint or a concern from an employee. And I think you're talking about employees, not the community.
Right.
So then, also with our collective bargaining agreement, there is a process to bring forth concerns. It all seems very bureaucratic, and unfortunately, a lot of times it is in local government. But I look at it as, I hope that every employee knows what the paths are if they have a concern. Because I have met with employees who don't necessarily feel comfortable going to their supervisor or even their director based on the complaint. And so, Ted and I continue to share an open door policy, but there are other times where we're going to have to either refer you back or we need to take it to a different level, whatever that looks like. At any time, if it's possible to work it out directly between employees, great, we encourage that, but we know there are some times that that's not the case. And so, all of that stuff is part of the employee portal. HR does a lot of online type trainings where you can get information. What if I have this question? And yeah, I think Kimberly mentioned it also. We do go through regular annual, well, I can't say annual, but we go through regular training around harassment and discrimination. A lot of times that's done with Moodles, you know, where it's pushed to your computer, you take that, and then any additional needs that you have, then we connect you with those particular resources. There are much more formal channels when it comes to community members that may have a concern about harassment, discrimination, or treatment by a city employee, whether that's somebody in the treasurer's office, it's a police officer, firefighter, or a member of the city manager's office. And we try to make sure that that is available to, you know, having to distinguish between a, you know, Title VII, Title IX, you know, there's a whole other set of parameters around transportation, and Mallory and her team really make sure that not only are their employees and their leaders, but also their customers and riders understand rights. And I think that is a, you know, a big thing that Kimberly and I have talked about, is that we take that for granted. We talk it and we speak it all the time, but we can't assume that our employees know that, and or our community members. So I think I appreciated that we're all constantly learning here, and it's our job to, I say, enrich that learning experience, but also be educators so that people know when and where and how to get information or where to go with concerns. Did I answer?
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you, Kimberly.
Commissioner Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, Kimberly, for the time, effort, energy you've put into getting this office off the ground. I think we all share the same objectives here. I want everybody of all stripes to be comfortable interfacing with the city, working for the city, working with the city. The issue I struggle with is, how do we know this is working? From your perspective, you're obviously very knowledgeable on the issue. How do we know if what we're doing is working? How do we know when it's time to change course, to double down, et cetera? What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's where it comes into play of being very clear up front when we're setting our goals, identifying what will it look like if we're successful, what will it feel like, and creating our benchmarks based on that. And then identifying what tools do we need to have in place, what accountability measures do we need to have in place, to identify if we're actually making progress towards what we've said we want to feel, what we said we want to see, we want to be different. So it's very important to be very clear and to dig deeper and not just have kind of surface level, broad. We want to feel more included. Now, let's dig deeper. What does that really mean? What do you really mean by that? How will you know if you're included? What will that look like with interacting with your team or with your manager? Really being very specific up front, and then identifying how do we measure that.
Excellent.
That's going to be the key.
Excellent. So what I'm gathering is that'd be more, not necessarily the work plan, but, or the roadmap, pardon me, but the work plan, after the data's collected, you know, then revisiting benchmarks and trying to establish from the start, this is where we are, this is where we want to be, and then so on and so forth.
Absolutely,
All right.
definitely. And that's one of the key reasons why it's so important for me, for all staff to be able to contribute to this process. Yes, we have the equity audit. Yes, there were priorities identified, but those are broad strokes. I want to get to the specifics so that we can truly measure if we're making progress. If this work is not performative, we're actually moving towards change.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Commissioner Reynolds?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you so much, Kim, for your leadership in this position. I think this is something that's really needed to make our employees feel inclusive in whatever capacity they are in. Actually, to find help if they need it. I think this is just an awesome, your presentation was just amazing, and I do enjoy our conversations. Thank you so much. Appreciate your leadership.
Thank you, Commissioner. At this time, I'd like to go out in the audience. I want to thank each and every one of you for being here. Out of all the workshops that I've attended in the last couple of years, I've never seen a group of people that have attended, and I applaud you and thank you for being here. We'd like to hear from a few of you, and I think Kimberly would like to hear from a few of you, and then we'll come back to the commission and see if there's any further comments from the commission. So Would anyone like to say anything? Lynn Moore Gray, and then we'll go to David Moore.
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners, Kim Holly, everyone else. I don't want to miss anyone. I just wanted to say on behalf of the Battle Creek NAACP, I am the first Vice President. We really wanted to be present here today. I just made a post on my Facebook page to say thank you to Kim for this, her passion, her leadership, her vision in getting this work started. We're excited to be in partnership where it makes sense as you move forward, and was just really pleased to hear this is very robust. So I share Commissioner Smith, it's a lot to measure and to really move forward, but we thank you for taking it on and doing it so well. So please call on us. Carrie Whitfield is our president. Please call on us if you need anything.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you, Lynn. Appreciate it. David?
This was a pretty nice program tonight. Thanks for your presentation. I sit here serving. I've been coming here for a good many years. You have these presentations like that, you people are just improving. And I thank you for sharing with the public of this meeting and educating these leaders and employees and educating us too. I come in here and I feel lost, I go home and I feel more lost, and I got a lot to learn, and I really see you guys are looking ahead, making progress, and where you're going, from what you're doing. And this is a pretty good meeting here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. Any other public comment at this time? Yes.
My name is J.R. Reynolds, and I'm engaged in this work in a lot of ways, and I just want to applaud the city for taking the bold step of opening an office of this type. I want to acknowledge the courage and the tenacity that it's going to take to achieve goals. It's not going to be easy. I can think of no better person than Kimberly Holly. She has the disposition and the relationships with the folks in the community to do it. And I think that she has the support of the folks that are at the city in order to engage it, as well as members of the commission. I do want to caution, though, that process is going to be very important. And as you go through processes, there's always that honeymoon phase where everything feels good and everything is copaceting and everybody's very polite about what it is that they say that they want to accomplish. But when the rubber meets the road, then there's going to be conflicts that come up. And as they do come up, I hope that you will keep, as Kimberly said, an open mind to the work that's being done and be open to the possibilities of how change is going to make things better in the organization. A lot of times when change happens, or the prospect of change comes down the line, fear can come up because of the unknown associated with it. But if this is done correctly with the support of the people in the room, with the people out in the community, the city of Battle Creek, the organization and the system is going to come out better for it. So congratulations again, Kimberly, and you have my support. And please let the community know what it is that we can do to help support you as you support the work of the city of Battle Creek.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for your comments. Very nice. Are there any other public comments at this time? Kathy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Kathy Antea, 117 Park Ridge. I guess I'm supposed to say this stuff still, right? Thank you so much. Thank you, Kimberly, for that presentation. I just wanted, JR said a lot of what I wanted to say, because there's a great honeymoon period. We're all really excited, and then it's going to get really scary. And I speak as a white person, a middle-class, privileged white person, And it gets scary, I can tell you sometimes, especially whenever we're talking about some change or significant change within our current system. So I just want everybody to be really brave, put your big girl pants and your big boy pants on, and be prepared, because it's going to be an exciting ride. The other thing, and Chris, thank you for bringing up the idea some people have about, oh, we're going to have to lower our standards in order to be equitable, et cetera. One of the things that I've read some research on that they do with corporations that adopt diversity, equity, and inclusion in a true fashion, not just a lipstick job. What they actually find is after several years of truly engaging and adopting, the capital value of those corporations typically goes up. The dollars that they make in those corporations goes up. The overall capacity of that organization goes up usually. And what they're finding is that when they have happy employees that are recognizing and understanding and accepting each other, they get a whole lot more value for their dollar in the way people work. So if we can just hang on, the first little bit is going to be kind of rough, but as everyone else, including Lynn, has said to you, there's a whole bunch of supporters out there, and we'd like to see that become very successful to improve our city even more. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kathy. One more time for additional public comments, and then we'll go back to the commission. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, Michelle Salazar, 141 Brewer Drive. Hello, everybody, and thanks, Kimberly, for a great presentation. I definitely learned a lot. Like you said, this work is always teaching us something new. I also work for the Community Development Office here on our first floor. In fact, the great privilege of working under Chris Lucier for almost 3 years now. And so the very interesting thing that stood out to me when deciding to apply for a position with the city of Battle Creek was that they were looking for a bilingual person to, I guess, like assist the people that were being underserved in our city. So I really wanted to take on that responsibility. I got trained as an interpreter, as a translator, and it's been a great joy to see the amount of new faces that come into our office, because they feel welcomed. It has also been challenging as a staff person to navigate what it means to be a bilingual staff person and kind of taking on additional responsibilities or having to create a new policy and new procedure that my teammates have to follow and understand so that we can, do this work efficiently and effectively. So I guess with that being said, just hoping that as we're taking on this journey that we understand that there might be some associated costs to compensate people who are taking on more responsibility or roles, and that we have your support because the difference has been tremendous. You can read our caper, last year caper, and Chris talks about that in his workshop every year. And, we've been able to assist a lot of families that weren't being served or accessing our resources in the past, 10 plus years, So I'm just really proud of that, and I can't wait with Kimberly and everyone's support, what we can do on top of that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Okay, I want to say thank you very much for the public comments we have. Are there any additional comments from the commission? All right, we're going to close our workshop, and I'm just going to conclude it by sharing just a small example of how change can start when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And for a number of years, the mayor's always had an office in City Hall. And a lot of times, the mayor never used the office in City Hall, so I always shared with Rebecca, why don't you just take over the office and allow me not to have an office? And she says, no, we want the mayor to have an office because there may be a different mayor someday. But recently, when Rebecca decided to make the decision to hire a DEI officer, she approached me, says, would you be willing to give up your office to allow some change to be made in City Hall? So, Kimberly, thank you very much. My office is now behind the commission room. So, and it's just as nice as the other one. So that's an example of an easy change that we're going to have. And there'll be other easier ones, but there'll also be ones that'll be more difficult. So thank you very much for your presentation. I look forward to receiving more information.
Thank you.